You're watching Fairfield Public Access Television. I'm Susan Kessel, and I'm here today with Connie Boyer, and we're going to co-host a really fun show with our special guest, Bill Greenley.
Bill has last year carved a Santa for us for the Christmas Lighting Committee for the Chamber that we sold as a fundraiser. Probably a lot of people remember that. It was a little depiction of the Santa that we had carved for the park. And this year we had him carve this little angel, which is the depiction, same as the angel we have in the park that was made a few years ago. So this is the first time we've seen it, and Bill, we think it looks great. We really love it. And so these will be on sale at the Chamber soon. We don't know how much yet, but...
No, we don't.
Anyway, doesn't matter. We'll let you know, and we'll let you know as soon as they're available. But they're really great. They have a little stand, so they will sit right on the counter or wherever you want to place it, a little tree. It's just beautiful. Thank you so much, Bill.
You're very welcome.
I can't believe how much it looks like the one in the square.
Well, we did a lot of planning and a lot of drawing and trying to match the one you had to the photographs to the drawings we had, and we finally came up with that, and it depicted out pretty well. We just stumbled on the ideas to do it and the way to put everything together, but it come out pretty well.
It is. It's just perfect.
So can you tell us the process again, what you do to create this?
Well, the first thing is the artwork, and that's the photographs and trying to transfer that to paper. And then once we get it on paper, then we have to get all the dimensions and the facial characteristics put together so they look, basically like the photograph. And from that point, then I cut out a blank out of basswood as my carving medium. And when I cut the blank out, normally with something like this, to get it right, I have to carve 3 or 4 of them, and the first 3 end up being firewood. But this time, everything just fell into place. Really? It just worked out just perfect. Even the wings, when I did the wings, they came out almost identical. So it worked out real well this time. Once I get it carved, then I have to seal it, and after I've sealed it, I usually make 5 to 10 molds. It just depends. They're a soft rubber mold, and it takes probably 2 weeks to make the molds. And once you get that done, then you start casting them, and these are a very difficult cast because they have to be. There's five things that have to be cast just on the angel herself. They have face down, face up, and then each side has to be cast, and then you fill the middle. And when you fill the middle, then you have to keep all the air bubbles out of it, so you have to fix the mold so it'll go upside down, so any air bubbles that are in it go up inside. So there may be air bubbles inside, but there's none on the outside. And then you mold the wings separate, and once you get that done, then you start the painting. When the painting's done, then you fit the wings to each angel, and you get them epoxied, and then make the stand, and put the tree on, and it's done.
So the wings are actually separate from, okay.
Yeah.
Now, last year at the Holiday Art Fair, you visited, and we were selling the Santas, and we sold out, and we ran out, and we asked you to make some more, and you did, and your wife was ready to kill you because she actually paints these.
Yeah, she does most of the painting. She's a lot better at painting than I am. I just sort of do the carving and the casting because she's good at it. I do the faces because she's not comfortable doing the faces, so I paint the faces, but she does all the rest of it very patiently most of the time, and when it's not patiently, I go out in the garage and shut the door.
So you came, and we talked about you doing this angel last year, and you went over to the Fairfield Square and took photos and actually looked at it, and I believe shortly after I heard from you, and you said you had a bunch of those little trees that you found somewhere that would work perfect.
Yeah, we went, I don't even remember where it was now. We went to, it was in Des Moines, that's where it was. And we just happened to stumble through an aisle up there that we were looking for paint, try to match the paint, because that's a procedure in itself, is getting the painting right. But we just happened to stumble in. There was a big stack of these trees. There's 4 little trees in the pack, and we bought, I think, 100 packs of them, and the rest is history.
So it's a wonderful piece of our angel in the Fairfield Square at our holiday time, and this year in particular, I think it's nice to have an angel watching over us in Fairfield. And to have this piece available, and we have 289. Is that right?
288. One of them I rejected.
88. Okay.
288.
I know. And that's it, right? That's all we're getting.
That's all you're getting, because I won't have. It's taken me all year to make this many, and now we're so close to Christmas that I'm into making stuff for my grandkids. So, and that and working full time, I'm done.
Okay.
That was going to be my next question. This is a hobby for you, not your full-time job. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's right.
I should say that we are in Ottumwa visiting at Bill's house, and Bill's a wonderful woodcarver here in Ottumwa and known throughout the Midwest, but your other job is?
I'm an engineer on Amtrak out of Ottumwa. I work out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and I work to Ottumwa. So I have a 6-hour commute to work, but it's worth it. It's every little boy's dream from the time they're 4 years old on, and I lived it.
And this is what you've always done?
I hired out on a railroad when I was 19, and I've been there ever since. I'm 51 now, so that's quite a few years. But I was in freight for 28 years and just went to Amtrak about 2.5, 3 years ago. So.
Well, this sounds like another show that we'd like to hop on a train and follow you.
Considering the events of September 11th right now, you're probably going to need a whole lot more oomph than I can give you to get on the engine.
Than just hopping on.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, my grandfather worked for Union Pacific, I think all of his life. He immigrated from Norway and actually shoveled coal in the ship to get over here to pay his way over, and then he started working on the railroad. And I think most of my uncles, my 6 uncles, or I shouldn't say most of them, probably 3 of them also worked for the railroad, and I think they did that most of their life too. So I'm curious, what is the attraction for a man to work for the railroad? I mean,
it's a genetic flaw.
Bill has a wonderful sense of humor.
You really don't have to be very smart to work there. It's not rocket science. And sort of like Will Rogers once said, the bad part about railroaders, we're bored, ignorant, and we start losing ground the next day. So it's a terrible life for your family, but it's something that gets in your blood, and it stays there. You can't get away from it. I worked on 4 railroads in Amtrak now, so that it's in the blood.
And my son Alex, when he was a little boy, he loved trains, and I bought him trains for presidents. And he would always at church, whenever the train would go by St. Mary's, he would in the middle say, "Train, train!" And there is just something about trains and boys and.
Mm-hmm. When I was a little boy down in Hannibal, the Wabash and the CB&Q ran right by my grandmother's apartment, and just to keep me quiet, my mother would go buy me a tablet of paper with like 100 sheets of paper in it, and I'd draw 3 engines, and then I'd draw a car on each sheet and a caboose, and I'd have that thing strung all through the apartment. Nobody could step on them because that was my train.
And so also came your talent, artistic talent.
I don't know if it's artistic or not.
I think it is. And when we take a tour of his home, which is absolutely wonderful and brimming with everything creative, you're going to see what I'm talking about.
but I think before we do that, we should hear about the ghost stories again. Since it's close to Halloween, he was telling us that he says there's a ghost that lives in this house.
I know, and I sat here and kind of got spooked as you were telling me.
Well, we sit right here in the heart of it. I don't know what it looks like, never seen it. I just know he does, or she, let's not be sexist here, it does things. Donna and I, my wife, were sitting at the table up there. We have a large gourd over our head here. And we're just sitting there drinking coffee one morning, and the gourd starts spinning. The doors are shut, the furnace isn't on, there's no air moving, but the gourd just starts spinning in circles about, a foot or so. And we sat there and watched it for a while. Okay, that's weird, but things happen. Then she has 4 African spikes over here that are made out of some kind of dried leaves. And there's a gourd that sits, a little round gourd that sits in there with a stem down and a hook so it can't possibly get out. Well, it ended up jumping out of the staff and ending up in the middle of the floor.
Our cameraman needs to sweep over there and see that because it's hard to believe.
Yeah, and then there was a little cow that sat up here. He had a bell on it. It was on the wall. My wife's a cow collector. And again, we're sitting there drinking coffee, and the bell starts ringing on the cow. There's no furnace on, there's no fan, no nothing. It just started ringing. Well, it wasn't too long after that, we were cleaning out behind the refrigerator, and my wife was probably 20 feet away from this cabinet that sits up here, and I was out in the shop, and the cabinet just fell over for no reason, just fell over. And I came in, and there was glass everywhere, and she's standing there freaking out. And I just sort of looked around and I said, well, the spook's back.
So if anything happens while we're on camera that we can't explain, that's the rest of the story.
Oh, interesting. But you never heard anything. You just see things move.
That's about it.
That's enough.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's a good thing we're going home before dark.
It's
Right,
harmless,
right.
baby.
Okay. So when did you start your wood carving?
I started carving in 1980. We had a layover on a railroad up in Savannah, Illinois, and the place that we stayed up there was, the rooms were like 8 feet square, and no TV, no radio, and just nothing. And the only thing we had to do was either go sit and watch the one TV for 80 men that was in the lobby, which was always on something stupid, or go down and sit in the tavern and rot in a tavern. Well, that gets old after about once. And I came back up to the hotel one day, and there was an old Burlington engineer sitting up there carving a duck. Oh, that's pretty cool. So I told Donna about it, and for Christmas that year, she bought me a set of carving tools. Well, as it turned out, unfortunately, the tools that she bought me, I never could use much because I didn't have the talent at that time. So I went down to the hardware store, and I got me a Stanley box cutter, just an old razor knife. And most of the things that you see in this house have been worked on with that knife because I still have it and I still use it. And that was 1980. And I bought some books, never took a class, but I bought some books, patterns. And once I got past the patterns where I wanted to design my own, then I started designing, and you'll see some of the end results, good or bad. My early failures, most of them I threw in our wood box in the other room. And when my mother and father-in-law would come down, all I would see was my mother-in-law's feet for about 20 minutes because she'd be head first in the wood box getting these rejects out.
That's what I would be doing.
Well, their house was lined with my rejects up there where they came from, Marshalltown. I mean, when the eyeballs are different positions, one ear is bigger than the other, an arm cut off. Well, Gertie just picked them up and took them home, and then the word is, my son-in-law carved that.
So she has a wonderful collection. Oh, fun.
Well, from where we're sitting right here, can you point out some of the, I mean, obviously I can see the gnomes over here, which are my favorites with my Norwegian background. And I have one similar to that little guy sitting right there. I think he's adorable.
This little fellow just sits on your knee. He's my favorite of all the gnomes. We've got some other ones in the other room I'll show you after a while.
So we are in Ottumwa talking to Bill Greenley. And you also go by the name Billy Whittle on your business card.
Yeah. Michelle Campbell and I, she's from Ottumwa, on Fox here in Ottumwa, we had a little show we did for kids about 10, 12 years ago. And she was known as Casey on TV. And each year we would do a thing on carving. We just show kids how to carve. And I was also Engineer Bill. I did a safety program for trains. So these kids had a terrible time trying to figure out whether I was Engineer Bill or Billy Whittle. And just to keep all the canaries in the air, I never told them the difference. So they think I got a twin out there.
So if you see a name card with Billy Whittle, it is Bill Greenley.
That's me.
Great. Should we walk around? And
I think we should.
Okay. Bill, you also do furniture, and this is gorgeous.
This is just a little old stereo cabinet. We had another one in here that wore out, so I just decided to make it, and I had some leftover deck lumber. So this is the exact same lumber that you would build a cedar deck out of. You get it out where it's supposed to be, where you can see the grain of the wood, and there it is. It's pretty neat.
That's gorgeous.
This is the thing that the gourd fell out of right here. As you can see, it's in there substantially. and that's what the spook knocked the gourd out of, and that was the one that fell out. So
Now, these pieces behind you, are these yours, or
No,
you
those are
also
just-
collect?
those are just cypress roots. I was going to carve those and put faces in them, but I never quite got around to it. But Donna has managed to incorporate them in her plants as much as she can, so they're just pretty cool. They're cypress knees, I guess is the correct term for them.
Well, I love this room, and obviously the plants do too. This is awesome. Does she put this one outside?
Yeah, we just got all of our plants in last week for the frost. About 90% of these were outside.
This is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years old. We killed, I think, almost 30 plants that were getting old and getting too big, and we saved probably 30 more, so she'll get new starts off of everything and go from there.
Wow. I'll have to talk with her later. Come over here, and what are these two pieces? These are really fun.
This is Roofie and Sadie.
Roofie?
Rufus.
Okay.
They were designed by a man named Harold Enlow down in Dogpatch, Arkansas. And they're made out of catalpa wood. I got a log or 2 logs from a sawmill here in town, and I roughed them out here in Ottumwa with a chainsaw, and then I took Sadie up to Savannah, Illinois on the layover and left her in a hotel up there, and I left Roofie here, and I carved him when I was in Ottumwa, and I carved her when I was in Savannah, and that took up my layovers. Now Roofie, I don't know if you can see the crack right here, but there's a pretty good sized crack. I was upstairs one night laying down before I went to bed. I had to work nights, and it was in the wintertime, and we had the fireplace going, and this wood was still curing, and I hear this rifle shot downstairs, and as soon as I heard it, I knew what it was. I come down, there's Donna and all 3 kids in the freak mode, and I walked right over to Roofie, and his hat had split from the heat. It was sitting next to the fireplace, and as soon as I heard that crack, I knew what it was. It popped, and that's the split. It sounded just like a rifle shot.
Thought another ghost story
No.
here.
This one had a cause.
Oh.
This is another one of our little gnomes here. That's the garden gnome, a Missouri garden gnome. If you have tomato worms, he'll pick them off your tomatoes and take them over to the neighbors. Which works good unless the neighbor has one, because they just bring them back the next night. So what can I tell you?
Everyone should have one.
Well, yeah, especially if you got worms.
Oh, and look at these gorgeous plants and the antiques. Now and just neat things. You and your wife were on a house tour in Ottumwa a few years back.
Yeah, we were on the, I think it was a spring.
Christmas
Was it
or
no, it was a spring tour. Is what it was, just
Okay.
a tour of homes. And I was telling Susan a little while ago, we had a gnome in every plant out here in this plant room. And this one lady just absolutely freaked out because wherever she looked, there was eyeballs looking at her. And she couldn't wait to get out of here. So,
Oh, and some of these plants, I don't even know what they are. They're unusual.
well,
That one
there.
back there
That's
with that leaf. It looks like something I have in my salad.
yeah. I'm trying to think. She has a nutmeg plant, and that may be the nutmeg tree. I really don't know.
It does look like a tree, so that could be.
Yeah, they're all just potential victims of a weed eater. They're just waiting for me to get too close.
I better not. So, is this an old piece or a new piece?
That's a new piece. We got that in Des Moines at the art fair. So that's pretty cool. I like it. She's got several things like that she keeps out there. We made a bunch of them for an art show a while back. They were teacups with a saucer, and you put them on a rod like that, and you keep birdseed and water in them.
Oh, what a fun idea. You need to make those for a holiday art fair. And Connie, I'm going to invite you back in here as we walk around the room and just look at all these wonderful pieces. More gnomes hiding in here.
And is this something that you have
Yeah.
made?
Yeah, this is just a little plant stand I made with that blue light. It's got all the dovetails on it. I love doing dovetails. In fact, I did a bunch of them today. I'm making a treasure chest for my grandsons, and they're big into treasures, like bird feathers, marbles, anything strange. Acorns without the hats, those are treasures. So we're going to have.
Oh, wow. What a great grandfather. And neat old stove. And we'll come in the kitchen. And this is cow country.
My wife has collected cows. She's been a Holstein freak for years. So whenever you see a cow, it's hers. And one thing about it makes birthdays and holidays easier.
Unless she already has it.
Now this piece right here, you said something about this.
Yeah.
You did this
Yeah.
piece right here?
Yeah, that's my family tree. That's a piece of the biggest piece of cottonwood bark I ever saw in one chunk. I just got it right down here at the hydro in Ottumwa. And it's got all my relatives in it. And if you look real carefully right there, that's me. I'm kind of bashful, so I hid that day.
Oh.
Now you said you work with basswood mostly. Is that, where do you get that?
There's a sawmill up by Rose Hill up by Oskaloosa. And I just tell him what I want, what dimensions I want cut, and he cuts it. And when he gets it cut, I go up and get it and dry it for about 6 months, and I start carving it. Normally I get it in like 8, 10, 12 foot long sticks, about 5 inches square. And that pretty well covers anything I want. So.
And you use that because it's a softer wood and easier to carve?
It's a soft hardwood with, there's hard softwoods and then there's soft hardwoods. A hard softwood would be like a real hard fir. Anything with cones is a softwood. And anything with leaves is a hardwood. So deciduous and coniferous and all those other big words that have iferous on the end. I didn't go to college much. But it's a softer hardwood with a minimal grain in it. You find some grainy wood, but most of it's minimal grain, so you can cut against the grain with a sharp knife and it still polishes up well. So that's why I use it.
Okay.
Now, as we walk around, I see little woodwork embellishments and specialty things. Is this all you?
Oh yeah, this house burned in 1982. We lost the whole inside of it, and I had the entire house remodeled except for one room upstairs.
You were living here
Yeah.
then. And
Yeah, and we lived in the mess too, which was, if I can give you some advice, don't ever do that.
my parents lost
Yeah.
things in a fire. So.
It's a nightmare. But the cabinets were all done out here, and I had them all finished. Well, then they got ruined with the water from the fire. And so we made do for a few years, and then about, I think 7 or 8 years ago, I just decided I'd had enough of it, and she wanted some more room for a cookbook, so I just redesigned everything. This is all the original wood. I just took it all down, and I mean the original wood I put in there because there were no cabinets in here to start with, and just planed a little bit off of it and refinished it, and the rest is history.
Gorgeous. Wow, love it. Even everywhere you look, there's something. And we'll come in here in the dining room, and boy, we've got a lot of pieces here that you've done, and we're going to want our camera to take a look at the cabinets along with the Indians. This is your Indian collection.
Back when we had the sesquicentennial, Donna and I were talking one day, and she asked me, why haven't you ever done Indians? And I had no answer for her, so that's pretty cool. So I started researching, and I thought it would be pretty appropriate to carve the Indians that have Iowa roots that ever touched Iowa. So, and, I could lecture for Indian history for about a week here, but I won't bore you with the details. But the people that are there, all of them except 2 at one point lived within 50 miles of Ottumwa. And that's Wapello and Keokuk and Tama, Appanoose, Kishkikosh, and their wives are there too, or one of them, Nawiwe Ku was Keokuk's wife, and also Oskaloosa is over there. She was supposedly Osceola's wife. He had 2 wives, and this was supposedly one of them. And I did some research, but there's no proof. He did have a wife who was a Black Creek princess, because they held slaves, but the slaves were considered equal in the tribe, in the 5 civilized tribes. And she was supposedly captured by Osceola in a raid, and he thought she was so pretty that he married her. And a good friend of mine from here in Ottumwa, Etta Vivian, had an uncle named Osceola, and she has some Creek blood in her. So I used her face as the model for Oskaloosa's face. And she hasn't seen it yet, but she ought to like it because it looks just like her.
I didn't even know that Oskaloosa and Osceola were Indians. Did you?
Well, I guess not officially. I figured they were Indian names,
but not.
I don't know. I guess I never really gave it much thought, though,
I
either.
know it.
Yeah, Osceola was a Seminole, and she was a Creek. So, and she may not even have existed. I mean, it's just I've been burned before by white man's history, and learned my lesson on being very refined. Yeah, you have to tread lightly around it. When I got Wakanda Cora carved, I researched him for like almost 2 years. And I got him all designed, I got him carved, and got him painted, and I found out the Winnebago tribal historian, who was a great-great-great-great-grandson of his. And I gave him a call. His name was David Smith. They even lost the walk-on name. And I gave him a call, and I asked him to listen to the history, and he said, okay, go ahead, real nice guy. And I read him the history, and he says, okay, you got everything right until after you said his name. Then everything else you said is wrong. Oh, so I'm ready to burn this guy. And he says, no. He says, you just keep it because it's a testament to the white man's history. And every time you show that carving, you tell the story. So that's what I did.
Well, I was going to say, so where did you actually research these? Did you go to the library and look for books or what?
Research material tends to kind of breed itself. When people find out that you're researching something, they send things to you. So, you know, in books that I found on the internet, and there's a lady who's written 3 books on Osceola in Florida. Talk to her. And the tribal historian for the Meskwaki, every one of the histories I wrote on these Meskwaki and Sauk Indians, I ran through him. His name's Jonathan Buffalo up in Tama. And, you know, you want to verify them. You know, you find something out and then verify it twice before you put it to paper, because otherwise it's potentially a lie.
I think you need to write a book next.
Something
else to add to do. Right. Okay. So
Spare time.
let's look at some of these pieces in this case, and you can tell us about them.
Oh, okay.
Let's come over here closer.
Should turn the light on, I guess. Each year, I started doing a Santa in 1991. There are some in here I did in 1990, but most of them I started in 91. And each year I do a different Santa, and I never do the same design again. And you'll see in here from each year, that's what, 11 years now we've done them. And the following year, after the year I carve them, I will cast them, mold them, and then I'll sell the casting of them, but I never carve them again. This year I did 76 or 77 Santas of this design right here. This is the 2001 Santa. And last year, this was the Millennium Santa. I think I did 75 of him, and they sell out real quick.
The actual carved ones that you do.
Right. Yeah, they sell real quick. And then we have the castings for other people.
Okay, so that's confusing to people, and I know even with our angel, people would get it and they go, oh, I thought this was hand carved. Well, when you're mass producing, you do the first one, and then like here you're doing quite a few, but then you do cast them, and they look just the same.
Oh yeah, they're identical once the castings. What we do is we pick the best one out of the bunch. I'll look through them and I'll pick out 5, and then I'll hide them. And then Donna will look through them and she'll pick out 5. And if we have a common 1 or 2, then we dig them out, and then she makes our decision.
Okay, and the reason for casting is so that they can be sold more reasonably,
Right.
because you just can't carve as many, and the originals are worth more money.
That's right. Yeah, they're worth more because there's a lot of work involved in them. I mean, it's the angel casting was, you know, it was over a full day. And in order to make 300 of them, guess what? My entire life has to be devoted to that, and you can't do that because I got Santas to carve.
Right.
So how long does it take you to carve this Santa for this year?
Well, when the first one you do, remember I said a while ago you screw some up before you get it right. The first one that I did, it took about 5 hours to carve it. as you progress through it, you do them in stages. You rough them out to start with, and then you do a little bit of detailing, and then you get contours, then you do the face. But when it was all said and done, they were less than 2 hours apiece, because I knocked 3 hours off. Now the Indians, on the other hand, Keokuk was the longest of the bunch, and Keokuk's carving alone is 25 hours, just for the carving. And then the painting is another 5-6 hours on top of that. So the Indians take a whole lot longer, and it's a different mode of carving too. You know, you change your music you play when you carve.
So that's my question, like Jim Shermer or John Shermer, who did our Santa, you know, out of the big tree. I said, do you ever like knock off a piece and go, oops, I shouldn't have done that?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, that happens with these small carvings too, and
Oh, yeah.
goes, oh,
It
well, there went his face.
Bigger oops.
Yeah, it happens more often with the little ones, but the evidence is a lot easier to get rid of. That's why God invented fireplaces. It takes care of your mistakes.
Unless your mother-in-law comes again.
Unless Gertie showed up and took them.
Before they make it to the fireplace.
I should say that you had some type of surgery this year, right? That kind of laid you up?
Yeah, I had to get my right arm rebuilt. My elbow was shot from pitching when I was a kid, and my wrist, there's a bone too long in my arm, and it tore my wrist up. So I had to get all of my carving done before July, and then I had to get your angels done from July until surgery. And then once I got the surgery done, now I'm just sitting around and just doing nothing.
Trying to think of something to do. I bet.
No, but I should, hopefully I'll be carving again by March. I don't think it's going to be before that, so.
Is that going to be a Mrs. Claus, I think? Have we talked to him about this?
No, we haven't.
She would break the news to him.
Yeah, we're going to have you do another project for us next year. A Mrs. Santa Claus.
What,
So-
have you seen art, Mrs. Santa Claus?
Oh, how cute.
This is, show the camera before I show you. This was the 1997 Santa here. He's sitting there with his list, and of course he's conked out, sound asleep.
I don't think I've ever seen these.
No, I keep these low profile.
Okay.
And then this is Mrs. Santa over here. She's kind of homely, but she's knitting her socks there, so. But we'll figure something out for you.
I'm sure we will. And we're going to walk over here. And I should mention as we walk by this pottery that your wife does some pottery, she said. So you are a very talented couple. And this, oh, look at all these. Are these yours?
Yeah. No, they're not my design. No, that was Harold Enlow again that
Okay.
designed the Hillbillies. That's his design. This cabinet that is right here is about an 1840s cabinet. And we found that in a auction in a pile of boards in a chicken coop. And it was just, it was just literally stacked up one piece at a time. And I brought it home and rebuilt it. The top was totally destroyed, so I had to make a new top for it. But we think it's somewhere around a 1918 or 1840s piece. The chest was made back, I think, in 77 or so for my wife. That's the silverware chest. And the little Hillbilkins, they were all made, somewhere around 83, 4, somewhere in there. I just started carving when I did those. So.
Now, the treasure chests that you're building for your grandkids, are they similar size-wise to this? Bigger, smaller?
Well, the boys are only 5 and 4, so they're not very big treasure chests. But they're going to have a hump top in them, and the corners are all dovetailed, and they can do everything but run over them with a tractor, and they won't hurt them. So that'll be pretty cool for them. And they're going to have a false bottom that nobody knows about but you and me and them.
Oh, that sounds totally cool.
Everybody that's listening.
I want one of those. I want one of those. You know, that's a good thing for when kids are sick and they get out their little treasure chest at home and pull out their little treasures.
Yep. Yep.
So my husband and I do that once in a while, actually.
Yeah, the long, cold winters in Fairfield, don't they?
Yes, that's right. Still kids at heart.
Yeah.
So, let's move over to this next piece
All right.
that Bill made, because this is a beautiful piece, and so tell us about this.
I started this in November of '84 to give it to my wife for her birthday in January of '85. And I got it done in March. It took a little longer. It's all white oak, which is about as hard as my head for the most part. Each one of the panels on here, there's 8 panels, and each one of these panels is 2 road trips to Savannah. I carved the bugles These are the bugles here. I'd carve those in one trip, and then the next trip I'd carve the leaves and the acorns. So each one of those is just about a week. And then the top I had to carve here, and she was on her honor not to look at it. But, you know, who knows, because I wasn't here.
I was going to say, I wondered if this was a surprise or how you could keep this from her. So
it was sort of a surprise. But what it is a cedar chest. It opens up, the top opens up, and then the front falls down, because she's not very tall, so I didn't want to make something she couldn't get into. And then it has a drawer on the bottom. The legs are cast Liberty legs, and we found those in an auction, I think, it's been 20-some years ago. And they're really neat legs, and I hadn't seen any at all except for that set until about 10 years ago when I found another pair in our set at an auction. I bought those too, and I put those underneath the table. So my brother-in-law got those.
oh, those are really great. It's amazing to find something, then keep it, not knowing what you're going to use it for, but eventually there's a use for it. That's amazing.
That's right.
That's the creativity of an artist.
Well, either that or you just get bored in the winter. One or the other.
So I'm going to give this to Susan. We're going to head that way, I think.
Well, just one little note here on the top. You said this is your wife's history.
Yeah, this, I don't know if you can get that on the camera now, but this is my wife's life right here. This is birth, life, and this is death. There are 3 stars in the sky, and those are the three kids. These are her initials, Donna Ray, and life is falling leaves. And then down here are the 5 of us. These are our birth month flowers. Each one represents one of the 5 of us in our family. So that's what that's all about.
Great. And we'll take a little break for a cameraman.
So we're in the living room now, looking at this incredible fireplace with these unusual things for a home fireplace. They certainly look like they have come from a church somewhere along the way. Can you tell us about these?
The sculpture came from an antique shop up. Donna and I were going up to McGregor, and on the way up we were antiquing, and we happened to stop, and this was sitting clear on top of a cabinet, and it just looked cool. So
this is why they're not afraid of the ghost. It's protecting the house.
That's right.
I think that's true.
Which came first, the ghost or this?
Well, the ghost and he were here at the same time, basically. But the ghost was actually, he preceded the guy up there. So, and the cross was bought at an auction, church auction, and I believe the incense burner came from St. Mary's here in Ottumwa from the auction.
Now, are those brass pieces? Could they be shined up? You know, most of church things like that, I recall, as being made of brass.
Well, I don't know. Of course, it may be like a genie's bottle too. You rub them, and that's where the ghost lives.
Yeah, right.
So you want to be careful.
So the mantle, did you carve that, or and?
Yeah, that's an oak mantle, and the translation is kind of weird on it. I know a couple of Germans here in town. Carl Wilt is one of them, and I had this translated from the grandfather of a good friend of mine, and he actually fought for Germany in the First World War. So I mean, he's pure D Kraut, and it's what that says is God protect our home. Unterwald is a contraction that he made up, I find later, and that's the one that says protect. So who knows? Carl Wilt came over and he looked at it and he translated it outright, so it came out well. But actually, the Unterwald doesn't exist in the German language, I don't think. On one side the left side is my wife's family shield on this corner, and then on the other corner over there is my family shield. This is the Fuller shield, and that's the Greenley.
So you made this mantle?
Yeah, I carved the mantle. Oh, it's been back in somewhere in the 80s, I think I carved it. So pretty cool. The fireplace, we put that in. Originally, there were 3 windows that sat there, and they had a piano right here when the house was first built back in 1913. And that was their piano. This was their piano room. And we wanted a fireplace, so I put the fireplace in, and then the bookshelves went in a couple of years later.
Yeah, so all this cabinetry is your carpenter work.
Yeah, these are winter projects. I get bored in the cold, so I go out and build things.
And I see a little collection over there of your gnomes.
Yeah, the gnomes. The cabinet that's over there, that was built for Katie Fogelsong here in Ottumwa. She was a good friend of ours, and she made Amish dolls. So we, after we got all these dolls and the bears that she made, we decided to kind of make a shrine to her. We lost her about 10 years ago, and she was a real good close friend of ours. So we just did a little shrine for Katie. We built the cabinet for her, and that's a good place for the gnomes too. You know.
I really like your ceramic piece there, and I don't know if we can see it. It's in the window with the white lady. Whose piece is that?
There are two of those in Des Moines. We got one for us, and we got one for our daughter. And I have no idea who made it. We just call her the lady and put her on the thing over there. It's really nice. It's a real classic work. We walked by this about 4 or 5 times trying to decide, because of the cost, whether or not to get it. And in the end, instead of just getting one, we got 2. Because we couldn't decide between them, and then we gave the other one to our daughter. It's a wall hanging.
So what are there any other pieces in here that we need to talk about? There's a few interesting looking faces on the wall over there. Is that something of yours?
Well, now there's a story to that. The bottom one, these were made in Oberammergau, Germany, which is the wood carving capital of the world. And the bottom one was given to me by a good friend of mine. And, you know, it's just a little thing. He just picked it up as kind of a trinket when they were in Germany. We were down at the rummage sale down in Rutledge, Missouri. And, you know, there's 50,000 acres of stuff down there.
I've been wanting to go there.
Oh, you ought to. It's a lifestyle in itself down there.
Is that a once a year deal, or?
I think it's every third weekend, like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, all through the summer down there. And it's worth a trip, because I mean it's really neat.
Is it over for the year?
Yeah, I think it's over now. But we were down there for one of the first times we were there, and I saw that the stem of that one on the left sticking up out of a box. And I stopped and picked them up, and there's 2 more of them from Oberammergau that I'd gotten just right. You know, I gotten this other one just before that. So I picked them up for $5, and there they hang.
They're great. They have a lot of character. I like that big one.
Yeah,
he's great.
Cool.
Yeah, those are really great.
And the interesting part is we have German carvings hanging here, and in one of in fact, a couple of the shops in Oberammergau, they've got a couple of my carvings over there. The bark carvings, they don't have cottonwood over there, because all their trees are hardwood. So one of the people that were here from Germany, they stopped at our booth one year and liked them so well, they picked up a couple of our bark carvings and took them back to Germany. So now they're hanging over there in a wood shop.
That's great.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That's really great.
So let's give our cameraman another break. Another beautiful piece that was a present for your wife.
This was her birthday present in 1976. We moved in the house here in 76, and I made her this. This was my very first grandfather clock. I think I made 10 of them, and this is the first one I made. And this is the one thing that brought tears to her eyes when she saw this. So my 2 boys and I had it out in the shop, hadn't had the windows all covered up and the doors locked for, you know, a month. And she never tumbled to it what it was. And when she brought it in, it brought tears to her eyes, and I think there's a couple of mine too, right down to it. But it's pretty neat. It's my favorite clock of all of them I ever built.
So you've done more?
I think I was trying to think before you got here. I think I built 10, and this was number 1. My mom and dad got one. Our boys got one. Or my son and daughter-in-law, it was their Christmas or wedding present, and then Donna's mom and dad got one too. So, and then I've sold quite a few over the years. So I think it's about 10 I've done, something like that. So
you actually did a lot of woodworking before you even started carving or whittling.
When I was a kid, I liked puttering. My dad was a putterer woodworker, and he built stuff out of plywood, you know. And I just love the smell of the wood, and I just sort of naturally gravitated to it. When I was little, when I grew up in Sigourney, they had a talented and gifted program up there, and for some reason I fooled them and I got in on the first year of it, and they told us to freelance what we wanted to do, and my projects were bridge building and sculpture, and the Mount Rushmore and that mountain down in Tennessee. Those things were my projects, and bridge building. Well, and then when I grow up, I ended up being a woodcarver and a cabinet builder and a clock builder. So my coup de grace was a 21-foot boat and a cabin cruiser. I built that all out of wood too. But I found out I like building them a whole lot better than I like floating them. I turn into Captain Bligh when I get behind the wheel. So that didn't sit too well with the little flower.
And right behind you, this house is just full of wonderful treasures. This is another one with a story behind it.
Yeah, this after the house burned in '76, we wanted to redo the door. This was just one solid block of glass, and we wanted to redo it. So we were looking for hinges because these clamshell hinges are real hard to find. And we stumbled on a convent up in Harper that was closing down. They were going to tear it down. And when I found the doors, I found the hinges, I was standing on stained glass. And I looked around, and I was just surrounded by it. So we boxed up a whole bunch of it and bought it and brought it home and took it down to Carol Taylor in Ottumwa here and said, make us something. So we gave her the dimensions she wanted, and she came up with these 2 panels here, and they've been gracing our front door ever since. So we like them real well.
And then let's jump over here for another piece here that you really like doing these.
These are the cottonwood bark pieces. They're fascinating because once you start on them, you have no idea what's in them. It might be a happy face, it might be a scared face, it might even be one hiding like that bottom one on there. But I've done hundreds of these bark carvings, and they just fascinate me when they come out because you just don't know what they're going to look like. That big one that's in the back room back there, that's the biggest piece I ever found. Most of them are this size right here. But once you get into them, it's just amazing because the wood dictates what you carve.
And so you just go out in the timber and find this, or what?
It's cottonwood driftwood bark is what it is. And it has to be in the water. It has to come out of the, driftwood.
Yeah,
water,
that kind
water,
of
okay.
water, right.
Yeah.
Wasn't making the connection there.
Okay, we didn't go to Driftwood 101, so what can I tell you? Should have showed up for class.
Yeah, that's right.
But for some reason, it has to be in the water for a length of time to leach some of the minerals out. Otherwise, the wood is so hard, it just destroys your tools. But once it's been in the water a little bit, it takes some of the resin, I think, out of the bark. And then when you get down into that red-colored wood, it just cuts like butter. If it's in the water too long, then it comes apart when you cut it. But this, if you catch it at the right time, it's really nice.
Okay, so you walk along the river and find this.
Yeah, just right down here at the hydro is where I get it all. It doesn't float in the yard. You have to go there to get it.
So, well, I guess, it's just you go to a certain spot here in Ottumwa to find
Yes,
that.
that would be the river. Got it now?
But not just anywhere.
Susan will try to fill you in on the details a little
Like
later.
when you're wherever, you don't go walking around the river to find different
No.
pieces from different areas of the country.
No,
We
because
let the spook do that.
yeah, we let the ghost take care
Okay,
of it.
this is really going downhill fast.
We're actually here in Ottumwa visiting with Bill Greenley about his hobby of wood carving and then seeing his wonderful home with all of his projects. And he has done this piece for the Holiday Lighting Committee in Fairfield. We asked him a year ago to do this piece, and we're selling it to raise money for the holiday lights this year, 2001. And it's a beautiful piece that is a wonderful copy of the angel that we have in our downtown square for the holiday lighting season. And it's just a great piece, and it was in memory of Suzanne Sutherland, is that right? I'm always getting that wrong. And it's a wonderful piece in the square that's in memory, given by her mother. And we're really happy to have this, and it will be available at the chamber right away. We're going to leave here in Ottumwa, and we're going to take 288, not 89 of them with us, and that's all there will be. So you can start purchasing them at the chamber, and they'll be available at the Holiday Art Fair, which Bill will be at our Holiday Art Fair with his other wonderful items.
This year the ornament will be a hobby horse.
Oh.
I do a different ornament each year, and this year it's a hobby horse. I should have brought one up, but I didn't think of it.
Okay, so he's well known at our Holiday Art Fair. He's been there for years and years and years, with a new ornament every year and a new Santa every year. And it's always fun to have Bill there and see his new pieces in addition to this wonderful piece.
So the Holiday Lighting Committee thanks you, and I'm sure Fairfield will be snapping these up, because they did with the Santas last year. They were a great fundraiser for us, and people really did appreciate the artwork and the work that you went to make these. So
Good.
it's really special.
Yes. Thank you, Bill and Connie, and we'll head back home with our angel.